Hi there, this is Tom B of Old Tom's Wormery. Um, these videos are always tough to take because most of the time I only get one shot. When I work a bin, it is then worked and I can't do a second take of the same bin. So this is me doing my best take of a stacking bin. At my feet, I've got a worm factory. It's got four tiers to the stack, which is convenient because I use the worm factory in particular, or any stacking bin with at least four stacks, to show my concept of worm flow. Worm flow is at the top. You're putting food and bedding. That's, so you're in the stacking bin. The top tray is food and bedding. The next tray down, that stuff has been turning into compost. The next stack down from there, so the third one, is vermicompost. It's further along in the composting idea. And the bottom tray is where it turns into castings, as good as it can. Typically, the castings are kind of lumpy and you have to filter that out and toss out the chunks. But that's the way these things are supposed to work. It's supposed to flow from tray to tray to tray to tray in a sequence that starts with food and bedding at the top and ends with castings at the bottom. You're going to see a lot of people do a lot of tricky stuff with switching the trays around and using trays to make bedding. That's not how they were originally intended. Those work for those people. Those techniques work for a lot of people. So if it works for you, good, fine. But this is how they're originally designed. I'm going to pop the top and pull each tray off, deal with it a little bit, talk to you through it, stack that to the side till I get to the bottom. I'll pull off the castings tray. These castings are more completed than usual because I had to use them for a demonstration. I will pull that one to the side. I will then restack with what is currently tray 3, becoming the bottom tray number 4, and likewise 2 becomes 3, and the top tray becomes 2. Then I will empty out the castings, bring that empty tray back over. If there are worms in the castings, I hope to show using the grating at the bottom of the trays as the temporary worm filter to get the worms to crawl out so that I get a clean harvest. Or the castings will be mostly worm-free and I'll just harvest them off to the side. And I will then put the empty tray on top. It becomes the new top tray number 1, and I will add some food and bedding to it, and we'll then move on. I tell people that each cycle should be about a month. That's approximate. It's the 9th of December, so I missed the first by 9 days already. We'll see come January how much I catch up, how much do I need to, how much do I feel like I can, and how much time do I have. So let's take a look at the trays. All right, the worm factory. One thing that was interesting that I noticed as I was setting up for this talk is they give an operating temperature of 40 to 80. I've always heard 60 to 90. I know that they can go lower than 60, but this is just a nice demonstration that shows you all these worm things that we do are approximate. Everything's a little bit fuzzy because it's biology, but if we're in this range of between 40 and 90, I know the worms will be okay. At 40, the worms won't do much. At 90, they'll all hide out on the sides trying to cool down. But again, don't stress the details. Get the process well. If your worms are doing good, then you're doing good. All right, so I popped the lid. I'm a person who likes using a worm blanket. In this case, it's a grocery bag that works as a worm blanket. If you've heard my other talks, you know I prefer a baby blanket. But the grocery bag actually just fits rather well. So this is my tray number 1. You can see that it is food and bedding. One thing that amused me when I realized it is that almost all of my bedding Certainly anything I add after the initial is paper towels. Paper towels and apparently at the moment sandwich wrappers. But bedding is any papery product. So I do a lot of paper towels. Clearly we had a toilet paper roll. When I started, I laid down a bed of shredded newspaper. I think I'm doing that again today as I look at what I've got available. I'll be doing newspaper, but also cardboard works wonderfully. You'll notice when I feed these, they eat what I eat. I eat a lot of onions. They eat a lot of onions. If you've heard don't feed them onions, I'm a different example. Mostly of what goes in there is these paper towels. Clearly we had spaghetti recently, and coffee grounds. I drink a lot of coffee. I'm happy that it's this full. It could be even a little more full. What happens is the new tray that sits here should sit on the bed so that the bed is touching, so that worms can crawl from the lower beds into the upper bed. That's what you'll look for. We'll show you with the next tray. You look for the pattern of the grids sitting on the bed below. So here we'll pull tray 1 and look to tray 2. Tray 2 is supposed to be looking like compost, but as you see, first of all, hopefully you can see the crosshatch pattern so that clearly the tray above was sitting firmly on the bed, and so the worms have no problem going bed to bed. But this looks very well composted to the point of being vermicompost-y. For this demonstration, I'd kind of hoped it was a little more lumpy. Let's see what happens when I fluff it. Oh, it's looking very vermicompost-y all the way through. And so we should be happy. It's progressing really strongly. We've got a fair number of worms. I would have expected more, but they're clearly doing a really good job. We still have lumps. You see that onion skins decay slowly. That's one of their jobs. They're living in the ground, and so it's not a surprise the skin decays slowly. All right, we'll get tray 2 out of the way. We'll have a look at tray 3, which we hope looks a little further along in the composting. Given how far this has gone, I'll be surprised now if there really is much difference between them. Let's see. Here's tray 3, and so we'll give it a fluff. We've got the grid pattern. That's great. It is a little wetter, and it is actually a little more completed. Actually, it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy. I see a little piece of plastic. Okay, it looks like some label of some type, maybe a piece of tape, probably a tape from the sandwich wrapper. So that one's fluffing. Again, there's fewer worms, but not none, and that implies there probably will be worms in the layer below. So this is tray 3. Should be mostly vermicompost. This one is clearly a lot of casting, but there's still lumps, and any kind of lumps means it is still vermicompost, which by extension means that when we make castings, it's always vermicompost. You're never perfectly pure castings because as the worms eat and then poop, some bits of paper come out their little butt. So again, don't sweat the details. This is vermicompost in a very good way. All right, this is my bottom tray. Like I said, it was artificially better castings than usual because I had them for a demonstration. I see grid patterns here. Not enough grid patterns. Yeah, a little bit here. Okay, enough grid patterns. The worms are able to move. Clearly, we do have worms in this bottom tray. Let me see if there's enough to worry about. It is quite a bit wetter. And so I will take advantage of the fact that there's just a few worms here to try to do a demonstration of using this grid as a worm filter. So let me get this stuff out of this tray. That is really good if you don't mind wet. What I'll be doing, because this is so wet, is that every day for the next few days, week, who knows, I'll come out and give it a toss, and I'll break up the little lumps. If you let it just sit, these lumps turn into rocks, into boulders. It's like clay. You could make pottery, but don't fire it. So I'll come out each day and I'll give it a little fluff, probably put a fan on it, get it to dry a little faster than just still air, but slow enough that I have time to give it fluff and to keep it from turning into boulders. So let me get this one emptied and we'll decide what we're going next. All right, that tray is empty. As I look at the bottom, I see a little bit of wetness. I see a little bit of castings that have come through. It's real possible these are worm poops, just like on the walls of a tote type worm bin. Not too many worms down here. I have occasionally put paper down here to soak up some of the liquid. So don't think of me too much of a hypocrite for the people that put trays in there, or rather paper in their lower trays. It's all just in the details, okay? Today I'm not going to bother. So this was tray 3. It is now tray 4 on the bottom, doing the final conversion from vermicompost to vermicasts. This was tray 2. He's now tray 3. Hoping he'll turn as nicely into the vermicompost as the one did before. This was the top tray. It's now tray number 2. And as you can see, the worms have been working it, but it still looks like bedding and food to me. I could even cheat. I want to make sure it's high enough. If it wasn't this full, I would probably add some shredded paper to keep it full, because I want it always full enough that the ones, as it works its way down and the compost shrinks, I want it always to touch the base of the tray above. So here's my old bottom tray, which is now my new top tray. If you could see this, there's tabs. Here we go. There's tabs on each of the trays. If this tab is sitting on the tray below, the lip below, it can go no deeper. I noticed that when I set this onto the second tray, that tab is sitting about this high, which is wonderful. That means that the compostables can shrink this much and still keep contact with the bottom of the tray. So now I'm gathering some worms from the other tray, trying to do an example, and this is going to be a very micro example. What we're trying to show is that if I set the full tray here, the worms wouldn't like the light and they would dig down, and I would pull off the top layer of worm-free castings. Then again, now the worms are exposed, those worms will dive down and scrape and dive down and scrape, dive down and scrape, till they get down to the bottom like this. And if we were patient, we could watch these worms very gently crawl through the grating and into the next tray below. And the whole point of that is that we're trying to harvest the castings without worms. Today we don't have time because this is a video, don't want to be too boring. We're going to say that I have now scraped and worms have crawled, scraped the worms have crawled, scraped the worms have crawled, and there's still just a little bit of castings in here. We don't care, we don't have to be perfect, we have to get this job done and go back into the house for lunch. So, we're done. We've set up the bin. We now need to add some bedding and some food to restart tray number 1. My bedding of choice today is some shredded newspaper, and I'm going to put in just a little bit because over the course of the next month, I'll be adding a lot of paper towels. I haven't pre-wet this paper that I should have, paper towels, by the way. And so I think I've got a sprinkle can here. I'll give it just a dash of water, just a dash. See, and it's just barely wetted the paper. I'm about to put some new food on top of it. When I do my coffee grounds, I real often do the old coffee into the same container. So my feedings tend to be wet, and you saw that my castings at the bottom are pretty wet. So I've got some old turnips. I've got some wine. I was making wine, so there's a little bit of must. There's some refried beans and onions and garlic bits. A lot of coffee grounds, a lot of onions, the paper roll, paper towels. There you go. I'm going to give them 2 or 3 cups like this. I haven't had a problem of overheating because with all the bedding that I've got in there, the bedding, which is paper towel, they haven't been heating up. Keep my fingers crossed. This one appears to have some carrots, perhaps some orange peels, some shredded takeout containers. Be careful on takeout containers. Most of them are plastic lined. That keeps the paper from getting too wet from the food. And so you don't want to shred those or you'll end up with shredded bits of plastic. I tend to hand tear the takeout containers. That way they're in big lumps and I don't get little tiny pieces of plastic in my bin. Again, some sandwich wrappers. They take a while because they're treated for moisture resistance. I'm going to stop there. I'm pretty happy with this mix of level of food bits, and bedding. It looks like a good combination. So I will just throw on the blanket and the cover, and I'll show you one more trick. With the new food like that, especially if you've got more fruits in there, it's real possible to have flies. I talk about using a fluffy layer. Real often, I will just, on top of the blanket so that it stays dry, we can add a layer of torn up paper. And the whole point is to cover it so well so that when the flies come out, fly around to do their mating, they come flying back to find the wet bed to lay their eggs in, but it's covered in a dry layer and they can't find it. What I've noticed with this bin is I tend to keep it pretty full such that the paper layer, the dry fluffy layer, really doesn't have space. So I found a new technique. My dry fluffy layer is another damn blanket. It's just a blanket, and I find that the flies can crawl out from under the blanket and then they can't find their way back. I do this when I've got flies. If I don't have flies, I don't bother. I just use the lid so that it looks a little tidier and people understand it when they see it. The blanket confuses them. That's me doing a rotation on a stacking bin. The harvest. This is the harvest coming out of there. Like I say, it's kind of moist. There are a few worms. I will probably use my worm filter, much like you saw that grating on the tray. I have a separate worm filter. I'll make them go into some other bedding. And then they'll make a really nice casting to go into my garden. So, thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.